Formula One returned to action at Zandvoort after a long summer break, and it ended as one more dominant race weekend for Red Bull. The whole Formula One community was eagerly waiting for the outcome of this race to get an idea about what type of improvements the teams made during the summer break. So, this is the final story of the Dutch Grand Prix, and we are going to provide you with the full insight into the entire race weekend. But before we proceed, hit the subscribe button and smash the bell icon for more exciting updates. After a 3-week break, F1 drivers started to test their machinery, which came out with some new upgrades ahead of the race in Holland. Red Bull showed a good pace, and they were closely followed by McLaren drivers in 2 practice sessions on Friday. Both Williams and Aston Martin also showed a significant pace improvement that could challenge the teams like Mercedes and Ferrari, evidencing more close battles at the top on Sunday. In the second practice session, Piastri experienced a heavy crash at Hugenholtzbocht, and Ricciardo also shunted into the tyre wall in his attempt to avoid Piastri's damaged car on the track. He broke his hand during that accident, and Liam Lawson came forward as his replacement for the race on Sunday. However, drivers weren't able to get the full use of the third practice session as they had to be more careful with the slippery nature of the track. Even though earlier weather reports predicted dry weather conditions for the race in Zandvoort, rain started to affect the Grand Prix weekend since the start of the second day. So drivers arrived at the circuit for the qualifying when there was extremely slippery track conditions, and each driver's wet driving capability was directly tested. After a strong practice session, Mercedes fans never expected that their champion driver Lewis Hamilton would face a risk of being knocked out at the end of Q1. His flying lap was totally disturbed by Yuki Tsunoda, and the AlphaTauri driver was given a grid penalty for that incident, demoting him to P17. Lewis Hamilton attempted again and was able to complete his final flying lap with a good result when there was 1 minute to conclude the first qualifying session. Liam Lawson, who was driving for AlphaTauri as a replacement for Daniel Ricciardo, tried to keep his car inside the track without any incident that added a surprise. He was the slowest in the time charts and was knocked out at the end of Q1, alongside with Zhou, Ocon, Magnussen and Bottas, as the grid penalty for Tsunoda was handed over after the qualifying session. It was not a good day for Hamilton, as his best effort in Q2 was strong enough only for P13. The biggest surprise of the session was Logan Sargent, who was able to qualify for the final round of the qualifying for the first time in his career. Stroll and Gasly also set lap times better than Hamilton, but they were also not strong enough to break into the top 10. Tsunoda and Hülkenberg were the other 2 drivers who were knocked out at the end of Q2. But Sargent's hopes of setting a better lap time in Q3 ended when he crashed into a wall after spinning at turn 2, and the session was red flagged. The damage was severe, and Williams engineers had to put in extra effort to prepare his car for the race on Sunday evening. Before this incident, the slippery nature of the track was reduced to a greater extent, and the track was ready for drivers to deliver their optimum performances. Both McLaren drivers, Norris and Piastri, outpaced the championship leader Max Verstappen at the start of the Q3. Then there was a big delay until the track was cleared after Sargent's accident. But within a few minutes of restarting the session, Q3 was halted again as the Ferrari driver Leclerc crashed into the barriers after some near misses earlier. When there were 4 laps to go, the remaining 8 cars started to set their final flying lap. At that moment, the track was dry and tyre temperature was not a big issue for the drivers to set some quick laps. With that advantage, Verstappen claimed the pole position by outpacing Norris and Piastri, who set better lap times earlier. Piastri dropped down to P8, blurring his dreams of starting the race in the front row. Behind Verstappen, Norris, Russell and Albon were there. 2-time world champion Alonso was in 5th position, ahead of Carlos Sainz. That meant the first 6 cars of the starting grid were from 6 different teams, and this was good evidence for closer competition between teams after the summer break. Perez, who is in a continuous decline, was in P7. The last 2 positions of the top 10 were held by Leclerc and Sargent, who experienced earlier retirements from Q3. Rain started to hit the ground parallel to the race start, and Zandvoort got a wet, slippery nature even before completing the first lap of the race. Drivers or engineers had no clear idea about whether they should pit their cars with wet or inter-tyre sets to match the developing track conditions. Perez decided to switch into inters at the start of the first lap of the race, but Verstappen gambled and decided to move with soft till the end of the second lap, and it harmed the healthy lead he maintained. Both Russell and Norris were brave enough to follow a strategy similar to Verstappen, but it opened the doors for Perez to pass them easily with the help of its intermediate tyre set. Despite Verstappen pitting one lap later, he easily passed Zhou and Gasly, who got a heavy advantage by switching to inters immediately after the first lap. Then, the Dutchman started hunting his teammate, Sergio Perez. With that, the track started to dry, and a critical moment arrived again to decide whether intermediate runners should switch to slick tyres immediately. But Verstappen decided to pit soft compounds at the end of lap 11 without having any second thoughts. This gave him an advantage over Perez, who pitted one lap later, so Verstappen reclaimed the lead again within a brief period after the pit stop. The first interruption of the race arrived at lap 16, when Sargent gave a hard kiss to the wall on the exit of turn 8, opening a safety car window until lap 22. Even though Verstappen got a good restart, Perez was unable to replicate the same success, losing his advantage over Alonso. Both the Red Bull drivers went for one more pit stop to take new soft compounds before rain hit the circuit again at the latter part of the race. Rain arrived at the circuit on lap 60, making the track slippery again. But Verstappen was brave enough to remain on soft for one more lap before switching to intermediates on the next lap. Perez continued his bad luck when he slipped off the track on lap 63, offering the second place to Alonso, who was chasing over a long period of time. The Red Bull driver nearly avoided the gravel and was lucky to join the race again without damaging his challenger, but Zhou Guanyu heavily crashed into Tech Pro barriers at the first corner when the rain intensified and the FIA decided to upgrade the initial virtual safety car status to a full red flag. Perez immediately called for wet tyres, but he had to wait as the pit lane was closed at that moment. After a 43-minute delay, the race was resumed by the final 8 laps, but the first 2 laps were done behind the safety car, and it was a 6-lap shootout to decide the final outcome of the race. In the beginning, Alonso attacked Verstappen very closely, but he was unable to match the pace of the Red Bull challengers when the race progressed. So, Verstappen crossed the line as the winner of his home race, matching the record for longest winning streak set by Sebastian Vettel in 2013, also with Red Bull. Alonso was back on podiums after experiencing a considerable decline at the middle part of the season. Perez saw the checkered flag as third, but lost the podium to Gasly after experiencing a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Carlos Sainz was able to reserve the 5th place despite being under heavy pressure from Lewis Hamilton within the final 6 laps. There was a heavy battle between Norris and Russell for the 7th place, but the McLaren driver appeared to be the winner of that battle. It was a satisfying weekend for the Grove-based team, and Albon finished the race as 8th, but he had the chance to finish the race as 6th, but lost it due to his late call to switch into intermediates ahead of the second downpour. Piastri and Ocon sealed the last point-offering positions of the race, and Liam Lawson, who made his F1 debut at Zandvoort, finished the race as P13, proving his worth as a good replacement option for the current AlphaTauri lineup in the future. So that's how the race in Zandvoort ended, handing over one more victory to Red Bull, which is maintaining a record-breaking winning streak. Now, Formula 1 is ready for another double-header with the race at Monza next weekend. Since 2019, every winner of the race at Monza has experienced a DNF in the following year. Leclerc, Gasly and Ricciardo became the victims of this curse over the last 3 seasons, and Verstappen is the next one who is going to face this curse. But he is currently in a good rhythm and essentially wants to win the next race at Monza to break the record for the longest winning streak jointly held by him and Vettel. Will he end this curse in Monza or become the latest victim? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel to get more exciting Formula 1 news. See you in the next video, guys. Goodbye.